This is Cambodia, a country in Southeast Asia. It was the cradle of the extremist regime of the Khmer Rouge. In 4 years, they killed nearly 3 million people. That is how they built a 100% worker and peasant socialist society. The regime was led by Pol Pot. The Khmer Rouge came to power in Cambodia in the late 1970s. They were mostly members of impoverished northern tribes engaged in subsistence farming. Uneducated peasants easily believed life would improve if the wealthy were eliminated. All city dwellers were considered bourgeois and deserving of just punishment. The Khmer Rouge army was filled primarily with teenagers, dressed in distinctive black robes with krama scarves around their necks. They did not fear death, did not ask uncomfortable questions, and were ready to zealously carry out the bloodiest slogans of the revolution. Pol Pot's propaganda stuffed them with an explosive mix of the ideas of Marx, Lenin, and Trotsky, generously seasoned with innate chauvinism. A Cambodian was expected to devote his life to the party, work, and never question the executions. From then on, everyone's fate rested on Angkor, modeled on the Soviet Party. At the top of the party hierarchy were family clans: Pol Pot, Ieng Sari, Khieu Samphan, and Son Sann. Former French student Pol Pot, known as Brother Number 1, was more equal than the rest. He became prime minister. In the capital, Phnom Penh, Khmer units were initially greeted with applause. But very quickly, joy turned into shock. A true nightmare began. Within 72 hours, all 2 million residents were forced to leave the capital. The country was swept by purges of former government supporters, military, and intellectuals.
The evacuation of cities was one of the most important factors in preserving the fruits of our victory. If we leave people in the city, then despite our triumph, the enemies will quickly rise and move against us. Bringing them to work in rural areas will allow us to keep the initiative in our hands.
Thousands from Phnom Penh, including the elderly and pregnant, were forced into the jungle in the heat. They were to be re-educated through grueling manual labor. For thousands, the expulsion became a death march. All the benefits of modern white civilization, from automobiles to electric razors, were outlawed. In public executions, cars were smashed with sledgehammers, and household appliances were buried in the ground. Pol Pot abolished money. The National Bank in Phnom Penh was simply blown up. The country was renamed from Cambodia to Kampuchea, where everything was subordinated to the party. Children were sent to special boarding institutions. Marriage and childbearing required approval from designated officials. In communes set up by Pol Pot's followers, people were enslaved, working up to 18 hours daily. For food, the Khmer Rouge turned the whole country into a vast concentration camp.
People were forced into grueling labor. They worked until collapse and death. We were working when they came and simply shot a man in the head. Can you imagine? They walked up and shot him.
In special prisons for political detainees, hundreds of Cambodians died every day, suspected of disloyalty to the policies of the Angkor Party. Confessions of collaboration were extracted through torture, ending in executions.
Anyone who dared to oppose Angkor had already sentenced themselves. He who protests against us is an enemy, and he who speaks out against us is a corpse.
This is one of the most infamous prisons of the Khmer Rouge regime. Once a school, Chuol Sleng was turned into a prison after Pol Pot came to power. S21. These are the skulls of tortured Cambodians. Most of them did not die from bullets. The Pol Pot regime saved ammunition, so prisoners were killed by other means. These are illustrations of some of them. Most often, bullets were replaced with hose and sticks used to beat people to death. Heads were cut with knives and sugar palm leaves. Prisoners were crushed by bulldozers, groups of the condemned blown up, buried alive, tortured by dismemberment, and children thrown to crocodiles. This is the tree where a record player with large speakers once hung. A few meters away, prisoners were being killed. The music was blasted to drown out the dying screams. In nearly 4 years, almost 3 million people perished at the hands of Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge.
I do not consider myself guilty. You won't find any document from me ordering such killings. These were the demands of the revolutionary path. I did not come to kill, but to fight. I wanted to save Cambodia. Otherwise, we would have lost the country.
The scale of the Khmer Rouge atrocities became known to the world only after the fall of Pol Pot's regime in the spring of 1979. The new Cambodian government declared Brother No. 1 and about 20 Angkor leaders guilty of crimes against humanity. They were sentenced to death in absentia. But the dictator fled into the jungle, staying with guerrillas for over 20 years. Until his death in 1998. According to the official version, 72-year-old Pol Pot died of heart failure. This was announced by one of his rivals, Tau Mok. At that time, he was vying for guerrilla leadership and had put Brother No. 1 under house arrest.
Pol Pot was not murdered, nor was he poisoned. Now, he holds no power and no authority. He is nothing more than cow dung. In fact, cow dung is more useful, because it can be used as fertilizer.
He refused to examine the dictator's body and ordered it cremated immediately. Ammunition crates served as Pol Pot's coffin. The haste raises doubts about the theory that the dictator left this world without outside help. Trials against the Khmer Rouge for crimes against humanity continue to this day. And memories of their rule still send chills through the blood.